Welcome to episode number 4 of 10,000 Miles. Today's guest is Kyle Eldred. Kyle is the CEO and co-founder of Frankston Packaging that started out in Tyler, Texas. He's been someone I've known for 17 years. He's been a great inspiration, a great friend, and a great business mind. So let's dive in. Hey, Kyle, welcome to the show tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on, Vic. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Super excited. Hey, before we get into intros and things, we've got to go through the ritual. So let's bring up the toast. Okay. Kyle, cheers to a successful podcast.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
What are you drinking there? What are you drinking?
So I'm drinking one of my favorites. It's Basil Hate. And I make smoky old fashions out of these. So
nice.
I've got a couple of different bitters, a cherry and some orange slice, and we smoke it at the end, and it's
sounds like tasty. A good time. Tonight I'm drinking the Dobel Maestro Diamante. I was turned on to this by Jaime Nunez, my son-in-law's father, as a staple, a fantastic tequila. It's all good.
All right.
Hey, Kyle, tell us about yourself. What, your current state, what you're doing.
All right. So I'm currently the CEO of Frankston Packaging Company. It's a company that my business partner and I, Norm Bullock, purchased back in 2020. We recently, over the last 4 years, sold it to a PE group, 80% of it. We've kept 10 apiece, undiluted. We've purchased a few companies along the way. And I just recently announced my retirement.
Oh, congratulations. That's good stuff.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, that's the end game for right now, because I know there are a lot more chapters after this. Take us back. Like, let the audience know, who's Kyle? Where'd you grow up? Bring us all the way back, as far as you'd like to go, as far as you'd like to share with the audience.
No worries. Born in Memphis, Tennessee. Lived first 4 years in Lafayette, Louisiana. My dad decided to quit Procter & Gamble and start his own business, moved us to Kansas City. So I was 4. Unfortunately, my parents got divorced at a young age, shortly, maybe within a year or two after that. Dad remarried at 10. And we were the Brady Bunch. We had 3 boys, we had 3 girls, we had a dog, and we had a nanny. And both parents worked. And my dad was pretty strict. He had one pretty important rule that really framed probably my thought process on business, and that was, whatever you want to do, I'm willing to pay 50% of it. You want to play baseball? It's $15 to join the league. $7.50 on you, $7.50 on me. You need a catcher's mitt or a baseball mitt, and the thing costs $15. It's $7.50 on you, $7.50 on me. So at a very young age, I learned what working was all about.
Wow.
I did, like everybody
Sink or
else,
swim.
probably my age. I had a paper route. I cut grass. My dad paid me $1 for the front yard and $1 for the backyard. I cut neighbors' yards.
Were they equal size?
Back then they were half acres, right?
Oh man, that's a lot of work.
So I grew up working. We had a chocolate brown house, so about every 5 years I had to repaint the house, and that was sand it down, prime it, paint it again, chocolate brown. 5 years later, rinse and repeat.
Your dad and my grandfather would have gotten along famously well. I tell people all the time, the stuff he had me do when I was a kid, if we made our kids do that today, Child Protective Services would be knocking at our door, be like endangering the welfare of a child. They wouldn't have it.
It is so true. So true. So I worked, most of my childhood. And, like at 14, my parents were divorced. My mom lived in Tunica, Mississippi. And I worked on a 10,000 acre farm, and Roundup had just been invented. And of course, back then they didn't really know about this whole dilution of Roundup.
Yeah.
So we had 5 across in a tractor, and I sprayed weeds from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night, green beans and cotton.
With
I did that
Roundup.
for 2 summers. I'm sorry?
With Roundup.
With Roundup. With Roundup. So I've got a very good cancer doctor now that I get to go to on every 6 months.
Right.
But then my other work career was in college. My summers I spent at a die casting plant, and in
Okay.
that plant, and not many people, the younger generation won't know what these are, but they were payphones. And so they had faceplate on the payphone and all the numbers.
Yeah.
And we had to plate them. Well, you did it. We had a mechanical one, but we also did it by lifting racks that they were on. And so you put it in, nickel, zinc, then you put it in copper, and then you put it in chrome. And let's just say I had rubber gloves on that were full of those chemicals because you were dipping them in water and then the next chemical. So I'm heavily laced with lead now, or not lead, but heavy metals. So those were kind of some of the jobs that I did growing up. Not prestigious, but they paid the bills.
All of those chemicals back then that we got exposed to. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, the doctor said to him, because he was 73, he had a leukemia that was more prevalent in children. And they were like, have you ever been exposed to benzene? And he turned white. And he turned white not because he was exposed to benzene, but because that's what we used working for my grandfather to thin paint. And the kids, I was exposed to it. And so his fear wasn't for himself. His fear was for us. And he said, no. I'm talking about like occupational exposure, not like, 2-3 times a year. You're going to be fine for that. But man, all the crazy stuff that we got behind and got exposed to back then. So it's amazing we're still so handsome.
And that you are, Mr. Pepe.
Likewise. So go ahead. You're in college, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of my work career, getting me to college. I along the way, I played football and baseball. And then in college, I joined a fraternity, the Phi Psi House. Met an incredible individual by the name of Mark Faber, who was my roommate, really influential in my life at that point. I played football my freshman year, and with my other roommate, Bob Bennett. And we've got great stories to tell about that. We were walk-ons, but we were treated, equally by the starters. It was an amazing experience. And I was rush chairman and social chairman of the fraternity, and just those 4 years were amazing as everybody. And I tell my kids, I go, best 4 years of my life besides having you guys.
Nice.
So he graduated from college. It was back in '82. Unemployment rate was 10.8%. And the good news is KU had a really good program for getting interviews, and a lot of people came, and I signed up for interviews every day. It was kind of funny, Ben. Vic, because I was, pretty cocky back in college. I was, I was like, if they want me, they'll come knocking on my door. Let's just say this,
I have a degree.
November, December, January went by. Nobody had yet knocked on my door.
Yeah. Do they know I'm rush chairman?
Right? Look at that. I thought that was important. So they had sign-up sheets. And it was, the big chief tablet and the big number 2 pencil, and you wrote your name on it. People came and visited, and I was fortunate. I had 10 job offers. I was at senior dinner, and nobody had a job offer. Everybody was staying to go back to college to get their MBA or get their law degree. There weren't a lot of jobs to be found. And I was fortunate enough. I took a job with Koch Industries right out of college, and I went to work for them. Again with my dad. I graduated on Friday. I started at Koch Industries on Monday morning, and it was in Wichita, Kansas. So I ran to U-Haul and drove my 3 items down to an apartment down in Wichita, Kansas, and started. Opening day, parked right next to Charles Koch in the front because it had guest parking, and I considered myself a guest at this point. and walked in the door with Charles Koch. How fortunate is that, right?
Oh,
So
did you really? I'm
it was
surprised
just
Wayne gave you the weekend off. I mean, you just
so so I started there, and in 3 weeks, I went to work for a guy named Ken Holbrook, who's since passed, and he was president of Coke Materials. Well, Coke Materials had the #1 draft pick that year, and I was fortunate enough to be that guy.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Congrats.
and they hired, I think, 12 people that year, and I was one of the 12. So you go down there, and in 3 weeks, Ken goes, "Hey, want to put you on a plane to Spokane, Washington. We're looking at buying these 5 plants, and you're going to get off the plane. You're going to meet a guy named Jack Hurley. I'm going to send an engineer with you so you can kind of look at the technical aspects of the equipment, etc." So I go, I leave. I come back 2 weeks later. I've visited all 5 plants. I've called on their customers. I've gone to the California DOT to find out what they do. Now, granted, I don't know the product. I don't know the technology. And the engineer leaves 3 days after he gets there, and I stay
Barely know the
7
business.
more. So I come back. Ken and I get on the phone with Jack, that owns the plant. Jack Lynch is his name. And so he asked his questions, I asked my questions. I write a 50-page paper. On Saturdays, you used to go in because it was kind of like a fraternity, frankly, at Coke. And all the guys on Saturdays would go in and tell stories about what happened Friday night. And Ken pulls out a red magic marker, and he goes through all 50 pages with me and just marks through it and writes it, And I'm like, I'm getting raked over the coals here. And he goes, no, it's your writing style. He goes, I said, well, at KU was, flowery, the beautiful eagle soared over the river. And he goes, yeah, you got to cut this down. He goes, this needs to be 25 pages. Get rid of all this stuff here. And so, he spent probably 2 hours with me going through these 50 pages. He and I get on a plane, go back out there, spend 2 days. He wanted to see the plants. We come back. I turn it into 25 pages. He takes it down to Charles Koch, and he buys it.
So wait a second. Let me replay the tape here a second. You come out of college. You graduate Friday. You start Monday. This is your first assignment?
Very first assignment. I'm there 3 weeks.
Okay. So now all of this transpires. From the time Charles says, we're doing that deal, how much time has passed?
I would say another 4 weeks. 4 weeks to go out there, spend 2 weeks, come back, go through my litany of issues with my writing, and then we go back out. So it's probably 6 weeks. And of course, once Mr. Koch makes up his mind, now it's just a matter of getting the lawyers involved and closing. And so I sat down with Ken like another Saturday, and I just go, I don't I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the business. I just graduated from college. I'm not even sure how money's made, really. I've had accounting classes, but I don't really know how money's made at this point. And he goes, Kyle, we hired you to make decisions. Got it. And so a couple months later, he put me on another project in Salt Lake City, Utah. A guy named Halabel, incredible man. And same process we went through. At this point, I knew how to write up the paper. We write it up, send it down to Mr. Koch. Because basically with Charles, you sat around in a room and you talked about the project, and you kind of knew whether he wanted to do it or not. We bought that one. And so 8 months after I start, they send me to Rock Falls, Illinois. In Rock Falls, Illinois, you're basically a profit center leader of a $5 million business. And I was fortunate enough to grow that business. I was traveling, I traveled 50,000 miles for 3 years in a row to go back down we hadn't had a sales rep in that territory in a year. And so, back then, you pull up next to a payphone and you're dialing in their number and you're putting in your credit card number, or you have a roll of quarters next to you. At the time, it was dimes. and you're calling all these customers, and you're driving down there and going to meet them. And we were fortunate enough to triple the size of that business. And within 2.5 years, they moved me to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I ran 4 facilities, profit center leader for 4 facilities. I was there 5 years, had a blast, met some incredible people.
Let
Kevin
me ask you a
Alberstein.
question. Let me ask
Yeah.
you a question before we get on to Kevin. So you're out of college. Now you're buying businesses, right?
Yeah.
That's what this is about. What's it like for a kid out of college to walk into a business, likely with somebody who's established it for many years and taken a lot of hard knocks? And you're wet behind the ears, and you're in college, and now you're driving the valuation of this deal. What was that like?
So, the first one was a huge learning opportunity. And, you just had to have thick skin because what you did was wrong. No matter what I did and thought about, it was, no, you got to think about it this way. And that's why Ken Holbrook was such an amazing guy, because he spent the quality time with me to educate me so that the next deal was a lot better.
Nice.
And it was a 1-pass deal instead of a 2-pass deal. But yeah, you ended up doing all the economics for it. You had to, basically figure out what's the return on net assets. And that's how Charles judged his businesses. So you had to know DSO, you had to know what the value of the assets were. He paid cash for everything at that time. So there was no leverage. We didn't have to do any leverage. There was no loans or anything like that. So it was an incredible learning experience. And it really helped me, because I did this throughout my career on a number of acquisitions for Charles. And I'll get into the biggest one a little bit later. But so the career went from Pittsburgh, and then I went to LA, did the same thing. And then
But you're in Pittsburgh now, because you were just about telling me about Alverson.
Yeah. So I met Kevin Alverson there, one of my best buddies. I mean, all these people are, still my best buddies today. I met Jeff Pyatt, I met Scott Pepitone. I still stay in touch with them. We still snow ski together, golf together, etc. So then I moved from there to LA, and they basically said, we got a plan out there that we're going to burn down or sell. You got 2 years to turn it around. And I was very fortunate. We called on some new customers. We negotiated some supply agreements that helped us. And basically, we took that thing from the least profitable of the 18 plants to the most profitable of the 18 plants in 1 year. What was helpful is one of our competitors who owned a refinery there had some financial problems, and they struggled to supply their customers. And of course, we stepped right in and took them from them. So that was helpful as well. Sometimes it's not everything that you do; it's what the market brings to you.
Sure.
You just got to make sure that you capitalize on it.
Now, what did this plant do?
This plant, all these plants made asphalt emulsions.
Okay.
So basically, anything that has to do with road building, chip seals, where you spray the asphalt down, you put the chips on top of it, the rocks on top of it. That was 90%. We also made the tennis court paint for the U.S. Open that we sold out of that facility.
Nice.
We also made some tar emulsions that you'll seal parking lots with, etc. And so, but the majority of the business was asphalt emulsions. Had a great time there. Had great customer relationships. We took them skiing in Colorado. Charles Koch had a place there. We stayed at his place, entertained, and went helicopter skiing 1 year to entertain our customers, and just had a blast. The customers had a blast, and we became very profitable through that period. So the Western region was 18 plants. After a few years, I got transferred to Denver. We ended up buying one of our biggest competitors, Rife Petroleum. And so we all relocated to Denver. And during that time, I was working for Dan Murray, who just was a fantastic boss, taught me a lot about the business. And then we got transferred to, and I became what we call the order capture leader. When I got transferred to Denver, we reorganized the Western region, and the book Reengineering the Corporation came out. And so we were the prodigy, if you will, of implementing reengineering the corporation into Koch Industries.
Okay.
And we went from a function-based, meaning sales, operations, technology, et cetera, overhead, accounting, et cetera, to a process organization. And so we spent a lot of times, in groups, just understanding how to make that transformation, because nobody, the book had just come out. We all were assigned to read the book, and now we've got to implement it in a, real life situation. And so we came up with these things. Woody Swain did a great job leading that group, and Rob Whitty leading that group, but really understanding how we go from sales to order capture, what that means, what that process means, and then order delivery, what that process means. So it was, we led the way. We led the way for Cook Materials, and then once we did it, we were able to explain it to the rest of the groups, and they implemented it the following year. So great experience for me.
That's awesome. So how many years in now are you at Coke by this time?
I'm 33 at this point. So I graduated from college at 21. So I'm 12 years in.
Okay.
I go from there, and we still do some acquisitions along the way that I'm involved in. But I go from there, I'm there a year, and I get plucked to go to Wichita, back to the home office. And I'm running profit center leader for the roofing asphalt division, the tennis court paint division, and then we had a water seal for basements we used that was also asphalt. And so I go into that group for 2 years, and it becomes a very, very profitable group the first and second year I'm there. Then I get plugged and go to the international group. So Charles starts the international group and tells us, in 5 years, I'd like this to be as large as Coke Industries. And we're like, okay, wait a minute. It's taken 50 years to get where we are today.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. But Charles was extremely visionary, one of the smartest business engineer. I mean, he had 3 engineering degrees from MIT. Very, very intelligent man, but also really understood the marketing side of the business as well, which is really hard to do. So I worked for Joe Moeller, as leading the international group, one of the CEOs of Coke Industries. And then Jim Runner was also in charge of the division that I was in. So that's where I met my business partner, Norm Bullock. And Norm and I started on this project. We called it Project Jose. It was in Jose, Venezuela. They were basically flaring natural gas. And at the time...
Explain to everybody what flaring natural gas means.
Okay, so when you drill for crude oil, and the crude oil in Venezuela is very heavy, so there's a lot of natural gas that comes with the crude oil. And so when they're when they're pulling the oil out of the ground, they get natural gas as well. And they're putting a fire to it. You guys have driven by where you see those flares.
Sure.
That's flaring natural gas. So we want to capture that natural gas and turn it into something, because you can't take natural gas at the time. You could take it, but the vessel was like $2 billion to build. And then you didn't get much volume in it. And then you transfer it from continent to continent. So instead they would turn it into, and what we wanted to turn it in was ammonia urea, because we had ammonia urea plants in the United States. And so we were going to convert it. And we negotiated a great deal on, 50 cents a therm for natural gas when it was trading probably at $3.50. And we were going to get all the offtake that went north of the equator. They were going to take all the offtake, meaning the ammonia urea that goes south of the equator. So urea is what, if you're out in your yard and you're pushing, one of those spreaders, that's urea. Ammonia is a gas that that farmers put into the ground. It's more of a commercialized method of fertilizing farmland. So that was the project. Norm and I met on that project. We flew to Venezuela once a week, and we flew to Miami once a week. And we got with Ecoven, which is the state-owned oil company of Venezuela, PDVSA, which is the state-owned oil company of Venezuela. And then Ecoven is the chemical division. So we met with all the people from Peckaven, the leaders of Peckaven, and we negotiated this deal over the course of 6 months. And we had a couple of people from the group, the fertilizing group, and we put the deal together, and Charles signed it. At the end of the day, we owned 35% of it. I think we sold down about 10% of it just because of the risk, the country risk in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it ended up getting nationalized after we built it, but luckily we got all our money back. The good news is, even to today, we still have the offtake agreements, and we're still making money on the trading side of the deal. So
Okay.
it was a fantastic deal. And I'll tell you, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. I'm in Cordillera, and I'm skipping ahead, but I'm in Cordillera.
Yeah.
I get on my golf cart, and Jeff Gentry, who worked for Coke Industries, sat on the board for 18 years, happens to be my golf partner. Never met him. I knew his name.
Never met him before.
We never met.
Does he know your name?
Yeah. He knew my name,
Okay.
and we had just never met through our travels at Coke. Because he was always in the home office, and I was only in the home office for 2 years. Or 4 years, 2 years. 2 years in the home office. So we're sitting there, and I go, well, tell me about your career. And he tells me, well, at one point I'm, president of the fertilizer group. I go, tell me about the deal. And he goes, still intact. He goes, they did nationalize. We were one of the last ones to nationalize, but they did nationalize it. But we still have it, and it's been a fantastic deal. So it was great to hear that from Jeff.
It's amazing.
Just by luck.
Hey, I got a question for you. Because I'm plucking some things out here, okay? The success in the run out of college it's unique, and it's rather unprecedented. And even as I talk to my own kids, 28, 26, 21, and you start to prepare them for what they're about to come through in their life and careers, teaching them things is the easy part, but helping them find their comfortable spot, that spot of confidence where they're able to jump into the unknown, able to, take it on the chin and bounce back because, they don't know everything, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to attach a measure. Like, what were you thinking through this process? Because clearly you lay out a real happy path here of a lot of success, but, what did you have to go through in order to make this story lay out the way it does? I'm sure, you mentioned early on, hey, I had the first deal, I made some mistakes and I learned the next one, but what did you bring with you out of college? You said early on you were cocky, but cocky gets you so far. So tell me about that. Like, what happened up until this point? What were the big learnings you carried forward, and how did they come about?
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of people stayed and got their MBA, and I can just tell you the introduction to Coke Industries and all the things that they taught you. I mean, you'd be in classes with Mr. Coke, and he'd be teaching you all different concepts. You heard early on some of the things that I was challenged with, but like you had quarterly reviews with Charles Coke, at least 2 times a year, where he would come out, you'd put on a presentation in front of him, and you had to know, because, he would re-engineer your math.
Mm-hmm.
And, you had to know it frontwards and backwards, or the next time you would know it frontwards and backwards.
Yeah.
So the MBA that I got at Coke was, there's just no precedent on what they teach their people and teach them to be successful, and what tools they give them to be successful. There's no other education you can get except on the job training. And many, many times when you went to your next job, the person you were replacing, they were already gone. And so it was truly,
you had to jump in.
You didn't have somebody that was there for a month to, guide you through it. It was, here's the files that I left. And, back then they were paper files, right?
You sound fearless. I mean, were you fearless back then? Like, did you feel like you had nothing to lose or everything to lose? Like, trying to get to the root component of why you went forward so courageously during all this stuff.
I think, it's because you had a lot of support. You had, when I say it was like a fraternity, it was. You had a lot of support, people that wanted to help you. everybody wanted to be successful, and there wasn't this, if he gets the job, I won't get it. There was none of that. There was so much opportunity for leadership roles, that because we were growing so fast, there was so much opportunity for leadership roles. Everybody was trying to help each other. There was no, pushback, or, if I help him, I won't get ahead. There was
Were you in an
zero of
office
that.
every day aside from when you were on the road?
In Wichita, you're in the office every day,
Okay.
unless you're out seeing your sales managers or something like that, or your operations. But when you're in the field, you're out and about with customers and
Right.
suppliers, etc.
Do you
Meeting
think
them.
do you think that there is a handicap in this in the current environment of, uber remote? Everybody's remote. Everybody's remote. You think the learning can be
There's
had
no
at the
way
same
that
rate?
there's no way the learning can be as fast. Being in the office, like the first 8 months in Wichita, you learned so much because you knew nothing when you graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
And those first 8 months, you learned so much. And then when they put you out in the field, you're the profit center leader. So, I mean, the operations people you're talking to, the technical people you're talking to, your customers you're talking to, you're setting prices. Nobody else is setting prices for you. You're setting your own prices. You understand your costs. You understand the price structure. You understand, what the return on net assets has to be for that business to be profitable. And so you set it all. You know your cost. You know what you're paying from your suppliers. You can do the math to figure out what your true costs are, and then you set your price to make sure that you're profitable. So
I'm always
it's
cautious not to be the old guy in the room. It used to be like this. We did this back in my day. It's, I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to do some things to, to improve. But this is an area that I feel pretty strongly that the people coming behind us who have this incredible opportunity to work anywhere, anytime from, from the comfort of their RV or their room or an office and home office, I think there's a knowledge transfer gap, and I think it's real. And unfortunately, the people who haven't experienced what it's like to be face to face think that what we're doing right now, we're on a platform, that it's the great equalizer. But I am, I'm in sales, right? And
yeah,
I'm in technology, and I come across so many new young people who work for a myriad of companies that have been given a script, and they read the script. They don't have a chance to understand the business. They don't have a chance to understand the process, and they just read and follow script. They don't have the ability to read the room. They don't have, and I know this comes from time, but if they were in the room and somebody were leading the way who had this experience, and then when the meeting's over, if they said something, can pull them aside and coach them. I just think I think there's a handicap here. And that's why I asked the question.
there is no doubt about it. I mean, I see
Yeah.
it with, my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, Brody's working for our company right now, Frankston Packaging, and he's doing a remote out of, his apartment. And there's nothing like going to the plant, understanding the technology, watching the machines run, understanding the people that run the machines, what drive them. How do we get them to go faster? How do we get, corrugated bought cheaper? How do we get paperboard bought cheaper? How do we get ink bought cheaper? How do we, get our people incentivized so that they want to, run the machines faster? Because that's all what drives the bottom line. And then it's getting out and seeing the customers, and what is it you like that we do? What is it you don't like that we do? If you're not doing all that, you're not growing. And you've got to do all that to get to be in a better place and a better leader and more profitable, which you guys, you well know, profitability is what drives the business. Without the profitability, you're not going to be able to service your customer.
I also think, and as much as I love, there are many aspects of social media and things and remote and platforms like this that give us the ability to do this from across the state. I love all those things. I'm a big user of all of them, but they hamper rapport.
Yeah, time and
Like,
place.
I can't become your great friend on this platform, or the friendship would just be different. And I'll share something with you. I've been working out of my home office here for 7 years. And I have a little alcove off to my left over here. And I used to sit in it and I sit in the alcove and it faced out the back, and you couldn't really see I had guitars up on the wall, and, I sort of would point my camera away from the guitars. And one day I realized that, it might've been 2017, Trump was in office, political divides were, hot. And I realized that we had to focus on what we had in common. And I knew that music was a great equalizer. And so I made a conscious effort to go out and buy a desk, put it on the side wall where I sit right now, and point my camera toward this back wall of all my guitars that I've spent a lifetime collecting. It's not that I'm flexing. Ooh, look at Vic, he's got a wall of guitars. It has nothing to do with that. It's that it creates a bond with people. And so when I'm on business calls, and these are skills that, I did it and anybody could put their stuff in their background, but these things carry on all of these rapport building skills, being whether you're live or back. These were things that took me a lifetime to build. Well, then again, Kyle, I got to watch the masters at it. My grandfather and my dad they were unbelievable. They could talk to a shoe and find out where the shoe was made, They didn't
They were masters at it. There's no
They
doubt
were
about it.
masters at it.
That generation connected like no other generation.
Yeah. And so, sorry to interject, but, so your view on this remote stuff is important to me. But now, let's bring us back. You did the Venezuela deal. It got nationalized. You brought me up to the part. You met the board member in the, out of Cordillera. Talk to me about your sort of awakening about getting out of the corporate landscape.
So, after the project in Venezuela, I got transferred to another group. Worked for a guy named Shelby Odell, who was incredible. He was president of Hydrocarbon, and started traveling Latin America, mainly Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil. And we were working on a project to try to bring liquid natural gas from Bolivia into Argentina and into Brazil. They put together a pipeline for natural gas, but we were going to try to develop a pipeline for liquid natural gas and lay it right next to it. The project we had a lot of interest, but I just didn't see a end game to get that project done. So I resigned, and I called Norm Bullock and said, "Hey, I'm out. I want to go buy my own business." And he goes, I'll be home next week. And he was living in Shanghai.
Just that quick.
Projects. He goes, I'll be home next week. And he flew home. We put a business plan together, presented it to some banks, started talking to some business brokers. We both resigned within a week of that or 2 weeks of that. So he had to work on getting back home to the U.S. And I worked on business brokers across 5 states. We probably looked at 2,000 businesses from a 1 or 2 page cursory review. We did full-blown economics on 100, and I did most of the economics. Not that Norm wasn't capable, but I was already getting started. And Norm's the one that helped build the model, but we just kept improving the model on basically the debt side of it, because we didn't have a ton of money. And we personally visited 25, and that means getting in a car and driving to Florida, because we were looking in states that had no income tax. So Tennessee, Florida, and Texas, and so we looked at a bunch of different businesses. We wrote.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Wichita, Kansas. I was still living in Wichita. I'd had 2 kids at this point. In fact, within a month of announcing that I was resigning, found out we were second. We were pregnant with Allie. Blaze is my oldest, but we were pregnant with Allie. And so, I got on the road and we went down and met the people that owned the business. We met the customers, and so we wrote paper on 4, and we would hire accountants to go in and check the books versus what, they had posted. And the first three, none of them checked out. We made offers based on the multiple. I mean, when you buy companies, you look at how much free cash flow they have, and then it's a multiple of free cash flow, depending on what industry they're in. And at the time, it was 3 to 5 times,
Right.
because interest rates were 9-10% at the time. So that's how we looked at it. It also had to be a business that would support 2 families. And so we decided to buy Frankston Packaging Company. It had a lot of assets. It had a building. It had things that we could borrow against. One thing that we learned at Coke is deal structure is everything. So the deal structure, they gave us a 10-year loan for about a third of it. Well, the banks look at that as equity. So they were like, all right, you put in some money and then you got this 10-year loan, that's equity. And then you got all this other debt. Well, we got a 14-year loan and a 10-year loan on the rest of the, 14-year loan and an 18-year loan on the rest of the debt. Then we get in and we're getting ready to close and we find out they got an inventory adjustment issue. So they paid us a bunch of money for inventory. Let's just say at the end of the day, after all the negotiation, they took the other thing is they took the payables and we got the receivables, and the receivables were significant. So within about 2 weeks, we had all our money back, and we were starting to bankroll because they took the debt. I mean, they took the payables, so they were paying all the payables, and we were getting all the receivables. So we put all the money in the bank in case we had a rainy day, and so it was a fantastic. And we also did the whole SWOT analysis, right? And we said, it's 99% repeat business. The customers take our product and throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
And all we do is remake the same exact product. So it was a no-brainer. We didn't know how to run the equipment. We still today, I can't turn on a piece of equipment. But we had great, great people that had been there for 20 years.
What year was that?
And that was the year 2000.
Okay.
So I resigned from Coke in 1998 and bought Frankston in 2000. I was 39 years old. And I did not turn on a piece of equipment, didn't know anything about the operations. We're like, it's a box. How tough can it be? Well, printing is a very unique industry. And we learned a lot about color management. But we started with zero knowledge and learned as we went. Norm's just been an amazing partner along the way, business partner along the way. And we've had a lot of fun at doing it as well. So that was buying the company. And then 12 months later, 9/11 hit. And our phone didn't ring for 4 weeks.
Wow.
And luckily we had a 4-week backlog. And then people, and we were like, well, we're going to start painting walls. What are we going to do with our employees? And all of a sudden the phone started ringing. People realized Christmas was coming. It was October, and we were slammed from then till the end of the year. And we actually outperformed that year. So in the first 20 years we owned the business, we had 2 down years, and everything else was up and to the right. And they were during recessions, or tough times, I should say. But other than that, we grew the business from $4.2 million to $26 million when we sold it in 2000. And we gained a lot of customers along the way. We've got fantastic relationships with our customers. We bought Day Packaging along the way and had welcomed Bob Benson to join the company. We bought, at one point, I think around 2016, we decided to get in the flexible packaging business. So we went out, I bought a flexible packaging press. We're like, yeah, how tough can this be? I can tell you for 3 years, we lost our fannies on it. That's a Wayne Eldred word.
The flex packaging is like that clear shrink wrap around the generic bottles.
Yeah, it's that, or it's a label. We do a lot of dairy, so we do front and back labels on milk bottles. We do front and back labels on like motor oil bottles.
Okay.
We've got a number of industries that we're in. but those are probably the two largest industries we're in. And, it's a different type of printing. We didn't know what we were doing. There's a whole different substrate you're printing on. It's flexo versus offset. There were so many technological things that were different. And that was an area we made a mistake. We should have gone out and bought a company that knew what they were doing, because we didn't know what we were doing. And, we had losses for 3 straight years in that division, and they were significant losses. So, it was a big mistake. They ended up turning out really well, but it sure wasn't fun for 3 years.
Kyle, I have the benefit of knowing some of the stories because we've known each other for 17 years now. And there's one story, I'm going to get you to the punchline on it, but I want you to tell it because it speaks to the tenacity that it takes to become successful in this business. Tell the story that ends in people on your living room floor gluing little cartons.
Okay, so we got an account, Tony and Guy, and so here's part of the story. We had a guy knock on our doors. It's Patrick DeBusk. He's our plant manager now. He knocks on our door in Frankston. He goes, "Do you guys need a design engineer?" This is 2001. And we said, "What's a design engineer?" That's how green we were. What's a design engineer? Well, we design the boxes. What does it take? Well, you need this Kronsberg table, and you're going to need all this software. You got to spend about $120,000. So we hire the guy. We buy the table. We buy all the software. So he's designing all these cool boxes. Well, we weren't smart enough to know that you need to take that design to the folder gluer and say, "Can you glue these?" So
Okay.
He makes all these great looking boxes for Tony and Guy. They take it to the folder gluer and they're like, "Yeah, there's not a chance in hell." So Norm puts them in the back of his Ford Explorer, brings them to my house. I got a brick, my FISI brick. We glue them with Elmer's glue and put the brick on top of them for 2 football games in a row.
Oh, no.
And that's when we decided. So, that's how you learn. So we're like, all right, Patrick, when you design this, you got to take it to the folder gluer operator, make sure he can glue it. Because if you design something, we got to be able to glue it to be able to serve the customer.
What other adversities did you have to overcome? What other stories you have about times through your 23, 24 years of business where it was like, because I remember you told me, and again, I'm giving away some of our relationship here, but you told me there were 3 or 4 times you think you were gonna turn it in, you were gonna fold up, like, "Ah, we're done."
Well, we had, and this was probably one of the toughest times. We had 2 employees. One was a plant manager and one was a sales rep. We only had 1 sales rep and me. And we had a plant manager, and the plant manager resigned and didn't really tell us where he was going. And then the sales rep resigns and goes to work for the plant manager, and they try to take our business. And luckily, we had non-competes with both. And we had to enforce them. And eventually, they signed 10-year non-competes and paid us a little bit of money to pay for our lawyers to keep them from. But that was a real worry. We're like, they know the customer, that section of customers, they know as well as we do.
Yeah.
So that was one really stressful time. 9/11 scared us, when the phone didn't ring for 4 weeks. The good news, we had great banking relationships, and they supported Norm and I. We started out with Citizens National Bank. We went to Regions, and now we're with Co-America, and they've been very understanding. We never had any issues, paying our bills or anything like that. So that was the one time that I was the most nervous about the business, is when we had a couple of employees, do something they shouldn't have done.
Yeah. How important is the banking relationship?
It's critical because, and we had a blast with it because we'd go out and buy equipment. Like one year, Norm and I went out and spent $10 million. About a sheeter, about a press. Press is $3.5 million. Sheeter's probably,
Was this the trip to Germany?
This is before we went to Germany to learn about all this equipment.
Okay.
Norm and I went for 18 days and had a blast. But we looked at it. They got something called Drupa over in Cologne, and Cologne, Germany. It's 17 buildings, and it's got every piece of equipment that we would ever think of buying for the folding carton industry.
For people who are watching this podcast, I want to give you a little something about Kyle. Kyle is the kind of guy that if he had to go to Germany to learn about something for his industry, he's just going to happen to go through Oktoberfest. He's be like, hey, Norm, let's go through Oktoberfest. We'll learn all about this gear, and then that'll take 3 days. And then we'll spend 15 days having a great time during Oktoberfest. So I don't know if that's what you did, but I have a feeling something like that went down.
3 days is a day too long that we were at Drupa. The other 16, we got in a car, we went to Belgium. We ended up in Monte Carlo. We had a blast.
I didn't even know this, but I just know enough about you to know that this was coming out. This is exactly what happened.
We had an absolute blast, but it was just, in that, the experience of the business for 20 years like that, there's nothing like it. I mean, you live with all your decisions that you make, good and bad, but there's nothing like being your own boss.
Yeah.
And Norm and I tell people, Norm and I had 2 arguments in 20 years. Both times we'd been drinking. We were playing pool at one point. We fought for about 10 minutes. It was over. Another time we're on vacation together in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We have about an hour long discussion.
Yeah.
Only 2 arguments we've had in 20 years, and mainly because Norm ran the operations, I ran the sales and marketing team, and while we would have discussions about what press to buy or big items, we stayed out of each other's way. And our attitude was, if you know it and I know it, somebody's wasting their time.
It's so great.
We
I
had
love
clear
that.
divisions on who ran what, and if we were unclear about what we wanted to do, we would ask each other, hey, here's the situation. We got this customer, we got this product. What do you think we ought to do? At the end of the day, I had the decision to make on that. If it was an operations decision, we would talk about the press, and the press we spent a lot of time on. We went and visited. The one thing that we did in this industry is we joined something called the Paperboard Packaging Council that Ben Markins runs. And so the day before we buy the plant, we call Paperboard Packaging Council, and Newth Morris is the president of Paperboard Packaging Council. And he goes, you got to get Ben to come down because he's great at operations. He's run plants. So Ben flies down like a week later, goes to the plant, and we sit down with him and go, would you buy this? He goes, not a chance. No way I would buy this. This equipment's too old. The customers are too generic. Don't do it. Well, you know the end of that story. We did it. Well, Ben became the chairman of the PPC, Paperboard Packaging Council. And Norm and I joined.
I thought you said the CCP. I'm like, wait a minute. He's the chairman of the CCP?
PPC.
Okay.
Paperboard Packaging Council. And so we've been members of the PPC for 20 years. I was vice president, chairman of the board, secretary. I sat on the executive committee for 10 years. Great organization. A lot of our peers sat on it. And the reason that we did that is when we went to buy the press, we were invited to, there's 75 members just like us. We were invited to come see our press, come watch it run. You don't have to talk to me about it. Talk to the pressman. Ask him. Nice. So that you would learn so much more talking to the pressman than the vendor trying to sell it to you, right? So you got, we narrowed it down to 2 presses. We went and visited probably 10 locations and sat down and talked to the pressman. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What did they tell you?
Yeah, that's so valuable.
So valuable. Paperboard. We got to know these people, and we'd say, all right, listen, we're running this product across our folder gluer, across our tray former. How does it work? Oh, God, you don't want to use that across your tray former. There's not a chance it starts to crumple up. So, then we know not to even try it. It's just hundreds of thousands of tips and dollars saved by being able to join the PPC and learning from the other members. Neff Packaging, Southern Champion Tray, Accord. I mean, there was just a number of people that we went and visited, and they said, "Sit down and talk to our pressman." It was invaluable experience, and so
How
that's what
early on?
associations do for you.
How early on did you and Norm understand the concept of, if you know it and I know it and we're both working on it, somebody's wasting their time? Like, was that immediate, or did you grow into that?
It was, when we first bought the plant, we were on the phone with each other, unfortunately, 24 hours a day, to the point where our spouses were like, really? We're like, okay, well, we're learning it, and it's important. So we trimmed that back to probably the last phone call would be 7:00 at night. And we're learning so fast because everything you heard was new. And we'd call and share and call. And after a while, we just sat down and go, all right, look, if it has to do with this and I don't need to know about it, I don't need to know about it. If it's something I need to know about, call me, text me, write me, whatever. And vice versa. So, the big stuff, like, I just got an order for 1 million units. That's important. And so we did a lot of it via email. We talked on the phone a lot. But yeah, early on, we went through, probably within the first 2 years, was
This is so
we don't
important.
both need to know it.
This is so important. And if you're a business owner out there and you have a partnership, and whether it's one partner, two partners, three partners, whatever it is, this division of responsibility is critical. I'm in a business with as a partner for 7 years now, and early on, we moved like a pack of wolves. Get on a call, 4 or 5 of us, 3 of us, 2 of us. It's like, the dividing and conquering was a learned behavior for us. And it's something I should have known, because coming out of corporate America, people had roles and responsibilities. And as CIO or Chief Marketing Technology Officer, there were calls I wasn't on, and you entrust people to do it. But when you're a business owner, all of a sudden you're like incredibly vested. I've talked to 100 business owners last year, 2023, and most will tell you they do this, and about 2% will actually do it. The amount of the ability to let go, whether it even be a business partner or somebody else that they've hired, the aptitude to do that is very low. And the fact that you guys figured it out along the way is definitely a big deal. You had a mutual respect for each other. I see that through the conversation, but I know that having met, Norm and knowing both of you. But this is key. This is something that I'm going to clip out of this and drive forward, because this is a pearl of wisdom here that's coming out.
Yeah, and I would say this, Vic. There are times where I gave people too much responsibility. They didn't use it in the right manner, and I didn't find out quick enough, as quick as I'd like to have found out.
Sure.
And without getting into a lot of detail, because I don't want to put people in that light, but we had areas in different parts of our business where I was like, where are we at? And why is this not, producing the fruits that we thought it was going to produce? And so in some situation, I was too laxed and didn't stay on top of stuff that I should have.
It happens,
But when it came to Norm, Norm and I, we knew you're going to be in charge of this. We knew it was getting done. Norm, you're in charge of this. We knew it was getting done. There was no having to look over anybody's shoulder.
Yeah. At a partnership level, that makes a lot of sense. But when you hire people and you bring them on, my preference is to always try to find someone who's a self-starter. Because as much as I can lead and manage people, and I feel like I'm good at it, like, I want people that are telling me what to do. I want to be surrounded by people who are raising me up. I don't like always putting the strap on and tug people along. It's exhausting. But I don't learn that way. And I'm a seeker. I want to learn things all the time. And I remember a time when I was at JP Morgan Chase, we were having a lot of problems with code quality. We used to do these very big, tens of thousands of hours of development and QA combined time for these big releases. When I inherited this group, the releases would come out and they'd be riddled with bugs. And so when I got there, they would say, hey, we've got all these, what they call post-production defects. They'd be in the hundreds. And it would take us weeks to chop them down and fix and fix and fix and fix, sometimes a month to wash them all away. And often, if they were not critical defects, they get pushed to the next release. You just couldn't stay in aftercare mode forever. And so after taking over the group, I challenged the leadership team that worked for me and said, hey, there's a leader inside the company here that has a quote. He says, expect what you inspect. I said, so when was the last time you rolled up your sleeves and you actually looked at what your people are doing? They're telling you what they're doing. But if you inspected the processes, if you inspected the code quality, the code reviews, the QA, and all of the things that lead up to a successful high quality release. Kyle, I had people come back to me and say, man, I can't believe what my people were doing.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more.
They backed up a little too far. And so you want to trust people, but what was it? Somebody told me once there's it's accountability, delivery, freedom, or something like that. If you want freedom at the end, you got to be accountable, and then you got to execute. And maybe it was accountability, execution, freedom. So ultimately, people want freedom to kind of do their gig and do their job. Well, it comes from owning the accountability and delivering on that.
And I would say this, and I wasn't very good at this, but we're learning with our private equity partner, which by the way, they're fantastic. Brad Gates, Rick Kerrigan, James Darnell, David Buckle, and
can you tell us the name of the PE firm?
Yeah, KLH.
Oh, cool. Hey, free plug. Look at that. Free plug for KLH.
No, but they're fantastic. If anybody's out there, looking for a PE group, they are fantastic. What they do that's so much better than what I do or did was, we have weekly meetings where we go through exactly what you discussed. Where are successes? Where are we failing? And spending more time on what do we need to improve and where are we failing?
Yeah.
And holding people accountable. Hey, here are the 10 things we said we were going to do last week. Where are we at? And 7 out of 10 we've done well on. 3 out of 10 we've made no progress, and why?
Yeah.
And so I would say instilling something like that, especially with Zoom, et cetera, where you've got the leaders of the company on the phone, on a Zoom call, going through spreadsheets, trackers, whatever it is, and being able to say, hey, here are the 10 things that are important to us. We've already defined them. Where are we at on them? And then what are the next 2 or 3 that we need to be working on? And so we've got a constant flow. And Norm and I did that, but we did it really not very consistently. It was, what's the hot fire of the day, and that's what we were putting out.
Yeah.
And so I think having discipline to have specific things that you're working on, and then meeting regularly on those to drive them out, it's absolutely critical. Especially when you talked about earlier, when some people just aren't in the same room, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all spread apart. So.
There's a reason I'm grinning, by the way. The reason I'm grinning is that I work for some pretty big companies, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, JP Morgan Chase. And, you cut your cloth on those types of updates and meetings, and you had to show up, right? So I didn't always run them. And I had to show up, and sometimes I was part of a 2-3 hour call, and I'd get 6 minutes. And it would go click, 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 click. And you never knew when your 6 minutes were coming. Might not come from noon to 12:06, depending on the cadence of what was going on. So you had to be on for the whole call. And then when it came on, pow, my 6 minutes had to be bam, 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 bam. So I learned this discipline. So when we started, when my business partner, Tim Reese, and my other business partner, Stephen Gerhardt, when we joined Steve, Tim and I had come from these companies where we did these monthly business reviews like clockwork. And so Tim he's a great data guy and he's a great presenter of numbers
I
and
know Tim,
information.
he's a great guy. No
Yeah.
doubt
So
about it.
we put together this MBR. Early on in the business, every line had a zero in it. Zero, 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 zero. And we would drag Steve through an MBR that said, how many new projects? Zero. How much new revenue? Zero. How much net income? Zero. Like, we would, what's the pipeline look like? All right, there are 5 clients in the pipeline. And we'd keep the discipline. And the meeting would happen every single month. Well, what we didn't know at the time is that Steve used to go home from those meetings and say to his wife, these guys are insane. They're insane. They keep me on a call for 90 minutes. We're talking about zeros. There are zeros here, But we had the trained discipline because, you manage what you measure. We didn't like zeros. We didn't want zeros
Exactly.
on the frickin' page. So it drove energy. And there were 1s and 2s and 5s and 10s and 20s and 100s, right? And then the deals we were winning were growing and the revenue was growing and the net income was growing and all of these things were happening. And the reports were dynamic. So the MBRs are not to tell you where everything's peachy. That's nice. Did this, did that, did this, did that. Where are the deltas that aren't going great? How do we focus on bringing those to the spots we want to encourage? So it's an evergreen process. 7 years later, and probably about 3-4 years ago, this is Steve's favorite meeting of the month. We have such a rich MBR in our company. I mean, we run it like it's Lehman Brothers or Chase. Well, Lehman Brothers is defunct, but we run it like it's Chase. I mean, it's a legit MBR across all categories in our business. You would look at these numbers and go, are you guys running a Fortune 10 company? What's going on here? But it's the system. We love it because, our pipeline grows because of it. Our deal closures grow because of it. We get attention. All of a sudden, something's dipping down, and we didn't wait 3 months to find out that the pipeline needs to be bigger. Hustle, 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 hire more people, expand, invest. Whatever we're doing, these MBRs drive this attention. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have found value in that as well. And, for listeners out there, man, the old saying, you get what you measure and you manage what you measure.
Right. It's exactly right. And, I mean, we're making a lot of progress in the last probably 6 months because we've had some challenges. I mean, we shut down a plant and we moved equipment to 2 other plants. So, I mean, we've had challenges over the last 6 months. We're coming out on the other end right now because hiring, the biggest problem was finding people.
Okay.
The U.S. is 9 million jobs short right now. And in manufacturing, it's hard to find people that want to work in that type of environment.
Why?
And
tell me what's going on.
Like,
what's going on in the job market? Like, what's happening?
So we'll have people show up at 8 a.m. and leave at noon. It's just, unfortunately, that's different than when you and I grew up. You showed up at 8 and you wanted overtime.
Yeah.
So you could make a little extra money.
And you hire people in short shifts?
Sorry?
You'll hire people in short shifts?
Yeah. I mean, we've got, some of our plants, we've got 3 shifts, 8 hours a day. Some people we run, 4 12s or 3 12s. So it just depends on which location and what we're trying to accomplish. But, some of the machines you just don't want to shut down. You want to keep them running. So you want to run 24 hours a day, especially the price at Frankston. The other ones, it's okay to shut down, especially if you're running UV inks because they'll stay in overnight. But if you're not running UV inks, then you got to wash up. And if you got to wash up, you want to keep the press running. So it just depends. But we're short people in all 3 locations. Our HR department's doing a great job. It's taken us a while to get the gel rolling, but we've got a really good HR department now that's starting to produce what we need from a personnel standpoint. But that's been our biggest challenge over the last 2 years, really since COVID. Since COVID ended, people, it's like you said, they want to sit in front of a computer like this and talk.
It's in our Zoom call.
In
Yeah, our
manufacturing, it's
Teams
just a
call.
different bird, right? You got to be there.
You got to
You
be
got
there.
to, it's manual labor and it's hard. And payroll's gone up tremendously in the last 2 years. Just tremendously. And so that's something that we have to combat with price increases, et cetera. So, that's just part of life.
What's the lever you guys are pulling to attract people?
We're doing everything. There's not a lever we're not pulling.
Is there something that's working more than other things? I think one of the obvious things people think is money, but what beyond that are people looking for?
So we implemented a 401k plan.
Yeah.
We take a look at our benefits. We're doing sign-on bonuses. We've raised pay. So whatever it takes, we're trying to get the right people in, because you know as well as I do. When we bought Frankston Packaging, everybody had 20 years experience. And we bought a company that had, Norm and I announced our retirement about 3 weeks ago when we went to Tyler and Frankston. We didn't go to Virginia. We went to Tyler and Frankston, and we looked around. 5 people were still there from 25 years ago.
Wow!
But it should have been 20. But we had 5 people there, and then we've had people that, like I told you about, Patrick DeBus. He knocked on our door, right? He's still there. He's been there 24 years. And
amazing.
It's amazing. He
knows where the boxes get glued now, though. That's the difference. That's why he's there so long. He figured out the glue.
He figured out the glue. But now he's a plant manager, right?
Wow,
he's running the joint. He went from knocking on the door, do you need a design engineer, to now being the boss. It's just a fantastic.
That's fantastic. That's such a great story.
And he's doing a fantastic job. He has really transformed how we do business from an operational standpoint. And Frankston, he's just done a fantastic job.
Is he local? Does he live out there by the plant?
Yeah. Well, that's why he knocked on our door. He goes, I just bought land out here. I want to move out here. I'm from Dallas. I'm moving out here. I bought land and I need a job.
Man,
and that's how
so great. That's so great.
So So he left. I'll give you a little story here. He left for about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. Went to work for the largest folding carton plants in the U.S., and that's Graphics Packaging. And they had 30, 40 plants at the time. And he left and started out as a design engineer for them. Quickly, they had 16 design engineers. Quickly became one of their top 1 or 2 to design stuff, and they patented everything, right?
Oh, okay.
They did all the 6-packs, all the 12-packs for Coke and beer, etc. And he designed a lot of stuff. Well, he's won a lot of awards with us. Package of the year, not package of the year, but design of the year. 2 years ago he won. So he's still one of our key employees, obviously, but just done a fantastic job for us.
That's great.
And again, we didn't know what a design engineer was 20 years.
Hey Norm, I think we need one of these guys.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to shift topics if it's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
I want to go to insights. I want to talk about things you learned. I want to talk about people. And you've been at it a long time. You were number 1 draft pick. If we liken it to football, you had a great career with a good franchise for a long time. You decided to start your own team, right? We carry along the theme. You you built a team from a maybe AAA to to Major League, bought companies, done all of these things, and now here we are, almost on the eve of your retirement. How much time do you have left? Another month or so?
28 days.
Not that you're counting. I want to talk about the big nuggets of things you've learned along the way that are not industry specific. I don't want to know what you learned about presses or inks, or what did you learn about business and your ability to become successful? What are the big takeaways that if you had to do it all over again, you'd say, I'm going to package that away for later. Or if I'm going to sit down and do a podcast with somebody, what are the things I'm going to send forward to the people coming up?
I would say that the very first thing is hard work. You got to put in the time. You've got to learn the disciplines. Whatever it is you're doing. I mean, you've got to hit problems head on. Like when a customer picks up the phone and calls you and says, hey, I got this off spec product. I need new product in my plant tomorrow. You're going to shut down my lines. It's how you react to that. You can not answer your phone. There's a lot of things you can do. But you pick up the phone, you hit it head on. And you pick up the phone, you talk to the customer, you go, hey, tell me about your problems. Tell me what I can do to help. And that's how I usually start. How can I help? And then after you hang up that phone call, you're picking up the phone and calling Norm, or you're calling the technical person. You're calling somebody and saying, guys, we got 24 hours to get this fixed. And I'll give you an example. We had a customer say, CEO just sold 50,000 units into Costco in LA. It's Thanksgiving. And I go, okay, what do you need? That's what I always say. How can I help? What do you need? And he said, I got to have product here by Tuesday of next week. I go, it is Monday. He goes, yeah. Tuesday of next week or this week? Is this week. So I go, it's Monday. He goes, yeah. I go, I don't have artwork. I have die line. I have blah, blah, blah. He sends me all the components I need. We're on press the next day. We press, die cut, fold, and glue. We ship it to him.
Outdoor same day.
My point being, you've got to solve the customer's problem. The reason we were successful is we had the best customer service group out there. We wanted to know what the customer needed, when they needed it, and how much they're willing to pay for it. And then we had to meet all those needs, whether it's storing it in our warehouse, where it's producing it tomorrow, whether it's pushing it up in the schedule, whatever we need to do, we were going to be the best at at customer service and getting them on spec, on time, every time.
You didn't have to be the cheapest, I suppose.
No. And we weren't going to be. We couldn't be.
Yeah.
Couldn't be. We were small. But we gave them what they wanted when they wanted it at the right price.
Nice.
And we
Hard
shipped
work.
it on time. I can't tell you how many customers we have that'll tell you, you've got the best customer service rep. We buy from, 100 suppliers. You have the best customer service rep in the industry out of our 100 suppliers. I can't tell you how many customers I've got that tell me that.
Wow.
And that's how you're successful. If you give people what they want, when they want, on time, on spec, every time, price doesn't always matter.
Use your own money or borrow money?
Borrow money.
Why?
OPM, other people's money. Yeah, so it's called leverage, obviously, for a reason. But if you take your money and invest it, you've got limited resources. Everybody has limited resources. Elon Musk has limited resources. If you go out and borrow it, especially over the last few years at 2%, 3%, 4%,
as you would say, that's free.
That's free money.
It's free.
But if you do the math equation on that, your return is 20 times what it would be with your own money. And I'm not exaggerating, 10 to 20 times, depending on your interest rate, et cetera, than what it would be, depending on how long you can borrow the money for. Because you're borrowing somebody else's money, you're paying them up at 2% or 3% or 4%, you're paying them a smidgen.
Yeah.
You're getting a great return on that money, and the rest of it goes to you.
Attitude or aptitude?
Attitude, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have the right attitude, if you bring the right attitude, you can learn at a fast pace. But if you don't have the right attitude, it doesn't matter how smart you are. because people are going to want to buy from you. They're not going to do business with you. They're not going to want to associate with you. You have to bring the right attitude.
What roles in your organization do you think bringing from other industries would be of high value, where maybe, you know, obviously somebody running a particular piece of machinery would, having experience in that would be a natural fit. But, you know, talk to me about some roles where you think bringing from other industries would benefit you, and how that would transfer how other people think about, you know, domain knowledge. And here's the reason I ask that. I'm out there in the industry selling solutions all day long. More so, you know, I say selling solution, but I'm solving business problems. And then we bring solution providers to the table. And first people say is, have they done this in my industry? And there's a very strong belief that that somehow brings comfort. And that's been going on for 30 years. For as long as I've been out working, people want to know, have they done this in my industry before? Because they feel that that's it's a bit of a safety blanket. And when I worked at Lehman Brothers, it was my first exposure to, hey, we'll take a person who works in the foreign exchange and now we'll put them over in the mortgage business. And we'll take them from the mortgage business and we'll move them back into fixed income, because their belief was smart people succeed and they can pick up and learn a business and bring a fresh perspective. So tell me your take on that.
That is absolutely 100% true. There's no doubt in my mind that if you've got the aptitude and the attitude, and we put you in any role, not any role, but a role that's, you know, relatively similar. I mean, we're not going to I'm never going to go run a press or run the operations side of business. I just don't have the aptitude for that, the knowledge or the ability to probably even learn it. But if you take people out of their current situation, I mean, Coke Industries is a perfect example. They move people around from one organization to the other. Like when I went to the ammonia urea project, I never heard of ammonia urea.
Yeah.
But it was just the processes that we'd gone through as a Coke employee on how to be successful and how to get projects from A to B to C to closure. So I couldn't agree with you more.
That's awesome. Hey, I want to go back to our personal relationship a little bit. So I want to tell a little bit of story about the first time I met you. And you know, often I play this back and you're going to be like, that happened? I don't even really remember that happening. So 2007, we're new to South Lake. And your wife at the time was a very outgoing person. You know, new people would move to the neighborhood and she drove the welcome wagon. You know, you say that, you know, all day long. She did that.
Yep. Yep.
And so I think we're in the house 2 days and knock on the door, right? Hey, I'm Marlene. And, you know, I notice you have kids and they look like they're about my age. And so we bought this. Yeah. They're about my kids' age. Right. And so me being me, I'm like, we'll invite anyone and everyone over. I'm like, Chris, this is a way for us to meet people. So the wives sort of connect first and the kids start, you know, exchanging, you know, riffs, and they're swimming in the pool and they're running around and everything's great. But I remember we also bought the house in the midst of us doing a small renovation because we were looking for a house with an extra bedroom. This house didn't have one, but it had a lot of wasted space upstairs, and we were able to take on a construction project. So the house is a disaster. There are boxes all over the place. There's sawdust flying everywhere. And I come home and I go, I invited the neighbors over to have a drink and a little something out back. Chris is like, are you insane? You know, and I'm like, no, it's completely fine. They live 5 houses down the road. They don't care, you know?
Yep. Remember
and
that.
So here in comes Kyle. And I just so happened at that time, I had a few bottles of Silver Oak Napa. And this is a great story. And that was your wine at the time. You really liked the Napa. And gosh, maybe I had, I don't know, 02, 03, 04, because this was 06, 07.
02, 03 were the best years.
Unbelievable, right?
Unbelievable.
And I had received them as gifts. And so Kyle comes over and we're like, what kind of wine you got? And I should have known I was in trouble at this point. I'm like, and I wasn't a big wine drinker back then. I certainly have expanded my knowledge and my appreciation for nice wine over the last 17 years here, much with your influence. But You're like, I go, come on, let's go look at this wine. Let's see what you got. And you're like, dude, you got Silver Oak Napa. That's the wine we're drinking, right? So I go, yeah, let's drink it. This is great. You know, I think we had 3 bottles of Silver Oak Napa. It was what I had on hand. And you're like, I love this guy. You know, we're having great wine and this is
We
great.
are going to have fun together for the next 20 years.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. And so from that, but here's the thing. So we got to know each other through the kids and over the years and did a lot of stuff together. And I want to tell this story because it's an important one for people listening who are out there maybe grinding, working inside a company and maybe not finding their harmony. I had worked in corporate America when I started. I started late. I started in my 30s in corporate America. I had a whole life in the music business prior to that. And I put my head down and I was grinding. And I was working at JP Morgan Chase, and I would get texts from you on a Friday that would say, we're meeting at the Ginger Man at noon. And the Ginger Man, for those who don't know, was a beer place down the street here. We go and have some beers and some light fare. And they had a few games set up outside. And I am telling you, Kyle, for years, and thank you for never giving up on me. Right. Thank you. And I mean that sincerely. I would get a text on a Friday at noon, Ginger Man at 2, Ginger Man at 1:30, Ginger Man at 3. And my response for years were still working, still working, still working, still working. Right. And I was like, these guys haven't given up on me. And I loved it. Now pause that for a second, because I'm going to come back to you. Then the Central Market up here, there's the Central Market, the market area where you can actually go eat breakfast and get a meal in the cafe. I used to go there from time to time. And in the morning, on a rare occasion, I'd see people there and they'd show up with their laptop and they flip it up and they'd go through work. And, you know, and I would always say to myself, man, what am I doing wrong? Kyle's at the Ginger Man at 2:00, and I know he's highly successful and I know he's working hard. And now I'm at Central Market, and this same crew of guys here are there every morning, and it seems like they're there all morning. But these people they live in the same neighborhood I live in. They drive the similar type cars, some of them a lot better, some the same. We see each other at the same restaurants. We see each other at, you know, different places. We see each other for, you know, Art in the Square at South in Town Square. What the hell am I doing wrong? How is it that I don't have the freedom that these people have? What am I doing wrong? And it just dawned on me one day, and it was so obvious in front of my face. And I said, these people run their own business. And it's not that you're not up until midnight or 1 a.m. And it's not that you're not gluing, you know, containers on your living room floor and having your kids, you know, glue the cartons. And it's not that you're not wrestling clients in banks and opening plants and shutting plants. You've got a lot of this stuff that comes along. But you were a great inspiration for me. And I don't know if I told you 7.5 years ago, when I had an opportunity to get out of corporate America and join in this business as a full-fledged partner, you were my North Star. I wanted to be able to create the way you created. I wanted to have the freedom. You used to tell me great stories about, hey, if I go to work today and I'm able to negotiate down the cost of goods over the course of a year and I saved $100,000, 50 grand was mine. On the other side, if I bought poorly and it cost us an extra 100 grand, I had to give up 50 grand. But you were the author of your own book, and you were really in control. And I had a lot of experience where I would deliver things and save millions of dollars for an organization. But, you know, the scale was, how did you do? How'd your division do? How'd the company do? You could knock 2 of them out. They'd be great. But if the third one was bad, you didn't have a good year because you got anchored down by some other, economic condition or something that happened. But you were my North Star. And really, over the past 7 years, as I've made moves in my own business, you know, the old bracelet, what would Kyle do, would come on. And, you know, I've leaned on you a lot. I've called you a lot. I've asked for your advice. And you've been gracious. You told me where things went really well, but you've been honest with me. Hey, don't do that. Here's where I did that, and we really screwed up. Or we should have done this differently, or I learned this. And I tell this because it's a side we didn't get to in the podcast that I want people to know about you. Kyle, you have been fearless. You have been the consummate positive guy. For those who don't know Kyle, and I hope everybody gets to meet him, he's the life of the party. There's no expense spared when it comes to having a good time and treating his friends and his family amazing. He's always smiling. He's always laughing. And part of the success that I've had has been really sort of emulating this freedom you've created for yourself. Now, I was no stranger to working hard. I started that when I was single digit age. My grandfather put me to work. My father put me to work. I love grinding. Matter of fact, I was talking to my brother yesterday. It was about 6:30 at night. I said, hey, I got to cut the call short. I got to go back to the office and wrap up stuff. And he said, man, you're always working. I said, I love it. I love it. I love what I do. This is not working. I love it. I love this work. I love this creation. But, thank you is what I wanted to say. And I wanted to memorialize it in this podcast. You've been a North Star for me, for others. And I'm excited post-retirement to see what the heck you do next. Kyle told me a story this morning about him day trading. I am betting that's only a part of the story. All right. I'm thinking that's a part of the story, and I'm excited to see what comes next for you.
I can tell you this, Vic. Thank you very much. That was very, very kind of you. You've been a North Star for me too, buddy. I mean, I've never seen anybody work as hard as you do and have your fingers in so many things that are successful. While I was at Ginger Man waiting for you to show up for a beer, I would think about it. I go, man, this guy is, he's a family man. He's got an incredible family, but he's the hardest worker. One of the smartest guys I know in so many areas.
Thank you.
I mean, whether it's a musician, you've been on my patio in Colorado playing the guitar. You've been on my wall dancing to music from the 70s. We've just had so many good times together, but I've never met anybody as smart as you are in so many subjects. And to know where you came from.
You need to meet more people. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I'm amazed at what you've done. Cap, there's so many things that you can do that I can't do, can't even begin to do. The one thing that I would, for your listeners, is the one avenue or probably the reason that I left and wanted to start my own business is exactly what you said. Everything idea that you came up with, you got to keep.
Yeah.
And we even bake that into the economics. They go, we come up with an idea that makes $500,000. Norm, you get $250, I get $250. And we're going to come up with ideas that aren't even in this spreadsheet that we just created for the banks. And that's really where the money is you got to bet on yourself. My attitude and what I used to always say, if you don't believe in yourself, who the heck else will?
Nobody
else will.
You've
got to believe in yourself. You got to trust yourself. You got to trust your instincts, and you got to go make it happen. And, I've just been very, very blessed and lucky that I got great kids. I got a great wife. I can't be more blessed than I am right now. And I'm excited about retirement. In 28 days, I'm going to sit on the board. I'm going to still help the new president that's coming in get up to speed. Norm and I are both going to be available. But Norm gets on a cruise on May 7th. I get on a cruise on May 22nd. And what's funny is we're going to go to the same places. We're going to be about a week apart.
That's great. Well, I'm going to make a prediction here as we wrap up. I'm going to ask you to come back on in about 6 months, and we're going to have you on the regular. By the way, I didn't know if I told you this. I have 52 bookings for this podcast.
So awesome. Congratulations.
It's incredible.
So amazing.
It's great.
That's amazing.
And
You will have Elon Musk on this show.
listen, that would be
You
a
will.
trip, but
You
we'll see
will.
where it goes. But I'm gonna have you
Cuban.
back on. And for anybody who's paying attention, come back in 6 months when I talk to Kyle. Retirement's not going to sit too well for him. He's going to be involved in something that doesn't violate his non-compete. He's going to get very creative, and he's going to have to figure out how to captain some other industry. Kyle, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I super appreciate it. You're a great friend. I love you. You're a mentor and a guiding light, and really an inspiration to a lot of other business owners out there. So thanks for coming on.
Well, Vic, thanks for having me. Love your family. Please tell Chris and Taylor and Alec and Alex and Mia hello.
Will do.
And,
Same here.
Love you guys, man.
See you. Thanks. Good night.